Hello and welcome to another episode of SCP Cafe. This is 2019, Week 8 recap. I'm your host, Blue Soul, SCP Wiki moderator, chat operator, subreddit moderator, author, loving husband, dog petter, steak aficionado, badge designer, contest news bringer. We have a lot to get to this week. We have the first ever SCP International contest to discuss. This is something that came in just a few days ago. SCP Int, which if you don't follow or didn't really notice, say, the translation boxes on certain SCPs, the English wiki is one of a pretty good sized set, actually. What we have is we have a set of about 15 wikis all over the world in a number of different languages, and they have their own universes, their own GOIs, and this is a fun little contest from the looks of it. This is you have to write an article featuring a GOI from another branch, and I think this is a really cool idea that you could bring in these GOIs that, you know, let's say our French or our Japanese community knows about, but the English don't. And this is going to work in the other direction too. So this is really just kicking off. The contest is just getting started, and the link is in great big letters at the very front and center of the SCP Foundation homepage. So take a look at that. If you're interested, this is a team-based thing. I've seen teams teaming up on the chat, and I think the English branch is gonna try to have a strong showing. This is fun. I'm really happy that International has been so successful that we can do something like this. I think this is a great idea. In other contest news, if you missed my sort of one-shot flash podcast from earlier this week, we have announced JamCon 2 to my mixed emotions. If you're not familiar with the first JamCon, we posted well over 100 skips in 3 days. This one is, I suspect, going to be even more popular than that, because the time window has been doubled, 48 hours per topic, and you have a 24-hour moratorium before you can post. So I suspect every other day we're going to get the shit slapped out of us with new articles, and that's a good thing. And it's a bad thing. It's a good thing because, well, that's plenty of material to cover. It's a bad thing because it's a lot of material to review and to decide what makes the cut. I still haven't decided on how I want to do it, but that's okay. We have a little bit of time still. This is still a few weeks out, and I will be covering it in some fashion. I know that much. But as we get a little closer and I talk to some of the guys running the contest, I'll have a better idea of what exactly I want to do there. I also have some news to bring to you on the cafe store front. I have, if you were maybe saw in the IRC channel yesterday, or even on the Discord for SCP Declassified, I have a fully functioning badge printer now. Much to my surprise, I thought I was going to have to sink a ton more money into this thing than I did, but I only sunk a small sum into it. I guess this is all relative. But yeah, I've got some badges. I ran some prototype badges. Those are going to be linked from the scp.cafe homepage. If you want to see what sort of this first draft, this thing's really cool. It can do full color prints, and it costs just as much to make something in full color, full bleed than doing a very basic one. So I want to go all out with these. I've also got the soft enamel pins coming. These are going to be little 1-inch pins. I've seen the proof for the pins. It looks really good. I'm really excited. Those are going to be in. I'm still they're a little ways out. I'm probably not going to have them for another 6 to 8 weeks. It does take time. They got to cast the die for it and do all that kind of fun stuff. But those are coming. Making good headway with my apparel company, and just got my first shipment of packing materials in. This is all my 100% recyclable and recycled materials constructed packing materials. So I'm not quite to the point yet where I'm going to be doing any giveaways. I'm not quite that far along, primarily because I haven't figured out how I want to have people enter. Um, I will be doing stuff like that in this podcast. I think that sounds like a lot of fun to me, and free stuff is always good, right? Like who doesn't like free stuff? So that'll be coming soon. Probably next week. Honestly, if I had to say, I'll get something up next week, and maybe I think I know how I'll do it. Actually, with a little bit of thought, I think I know what I want to do. So that's the news. We have 5 skips to look at this week, out of 20 that were in scope. A couple of really good ones here. I think we've got a pretty good gamut of emotions going on. A little later this week, I'm going to cover one that I'm not covering in this set of 5 because it's quite long, but it's good, and I'm going to do it as a one-shot. So that will be probably released on Monday. But for now, I have 5 I'm going to cover, and I wanted to kind of remind people these aren't necessarily the 5 highest rated or even the 5 subjectively best works of the week. They are ones that I feel do something really well, or they lend themselves very readily to discussion on the universe and from a literary deconstruction sort of standpoint. So we're going to get started here with SCP 4512, and this is titled A Goddamn Filthy Teleporting Party Pool. This was a co-write with Dr. Annoying Dog and Rounderhouse, who notably did Swine God a few weeks ago, SCP-4511. In addition, Wodenaz and Uncle Nicolini. So 4 people on this co-write, and we're gonna jump right in here. So we have an image of what looks like somebody's backyard, and in the backyard is a swimming pool with something splashing in it, and some nice little rocks. It looks like a pretty nice in-ground pool, and some nice plants around it, and a little wooden fence on the back of it. And the caption reads, "Photo of SCP-4512 as it appeared in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Prior to 4512's appearance, the space was approximately a third the size and occupied by a swing set and the occupant's dog." And we have a footnote by dog, and that says the dog reappeared unharmed following SCP-4512's demanifestation. So we go from that to procedures that indicate that we have been totally unsuccessful in containing this thing. We basically, what we're doing at this point is we formed a mobile task force, Iota 9 Pool Boys, to track all appearances of 4512 and follow its demands, and the creation of a worldwide web crawler that finds any forum posts, news articles, social media, and etc. pertaining to the appearance of 4512. And that's the entirety of our procedures. We are very much in a we're kind of playing catch up to this thing. So that by itself necessitates its object class of Keter. So we go to a description that states that 4512 is a 40 square meter sapient swimming pool, capable of instantaneous translocation, and it exclusively manifests in the backyards of homes and landlocked areas, and appears to specifically target the U.S. state of Minnesota. It's interesting. During one of these manifestation events, the backyard will anomalously expand if necessary to accommodate 4512, at which point it will appear fully depressed into the ground. So this picture that we have, where it said the space was approximately a third the size prior to the skip's appearance, I'm not real sure how this works from the outside looking in, but I like to imagine this is almost like a pocket dimension thing, like one of these bigger on the inside than the outside kind of things, where your backyard just sort of magically expands to accommodate this big in-ground pool. So the skip, when it does manifest somewhere in Minnesota, it is full of garbage, all sorts of various crap. And consistently we find imitation Hawaiian leis, plastic coconut shells, cocktail glasses, bathing suits, sun lotion bottles, and then we found various other sort of more odd objects, and some of the highlights on this are an Apple II computer, 4 bottles of Kirkland brand white wine, all empty, 5 lunar rocks, 3 left boots dated to the 18th century, 16 grams of bonobo fur, 2 dead swans, a Foundation ID card, and 29 dead saltwater crabs. So if you can figure out a rhyme or reason there, please let me know. I'm dying to know what these things have in common because I haven't figured it out. I thought about it for a while I was reading this thing, like, what in the hell? Where's it getting this shit from? So we go from this list of various weird things we found in the pool to explaining that once the skip has manifested, it begins vocalizing, and we have a footnote by vocalizing that says that it's a deeply resonant voice that sounds marginally similar to the accent of a native Hawaiian. It begins vocalizing to nearby people in an attempt to persuade them to approach, and if they do, it will attempt to strike a bargain with them. It will give them one of its items, one or more, in exchange for cleaning out the pool. And if it refuses, if you refuse the offer, the skip offers more and more valuable things, but it will get louder and more angry about the injustice of it all if they keep refusing. And the vocalizations grow louder and louder to an indefinite maximum, and the highest recorded volume surpassed the ability for our current measuring tools to document, but the intensity was recorded to cause an earthquake measured 5 on the Richter scale. So that's a lot of pressure from a swimming pool. And once it's been cleaned to its satisfaction, it demanifests, and the space occupying that the skip formerly occupied will return to its previous dimensions with no real evidence of it ever having been there. So we go to from there to an addendum with some containment attempts, various things that we tried that really never worked. We tried putting it in a soundproof enclosure. That it was an experimental substance that kills sound waves on contact, and this worked for about 9 days, and eventually the vocalizations reached over 200 decibels, which would be incredibly powerful pressure waves. And this actually caused the containment material to sublimate and killed one person due to an air embolism in the lungs, and I could totally see that happening, as a matter of fact. We then tried to fill the swimming pool with even more garbage to see what it would do, given that we've seen this actually cause a pretty good sized earthquake and create unbelievably loud pressure waves. I'm not sure I get why this was approved, but we did approve it, and we dumped 2 tons of trash into the pool, and it got really loud. It didn't like that one goddamn bit. It collapsed the nearby structure, presumably the house next to it, and demanifested, and it was found 2 months later in Bloomington, Minnesota, fully cleaned, and appeared to recognize Foundation individuals directly involved with this containment attempt. So we go from there. And by the way, we have this list of manifestation counts going on through these procedures, and this thing has manifested by the end of this over 2,000 times. Just throwing this out there, this thing keeps popping up across Minnesota. This swimming pool that speaks kind of sounds Hawaiian and comes full of party trash. We had an idea to create a nightclub around it, and we rejected that. And there was a note that said, "Sir, I know we're desperate, but I can't approve this in good faith." And ignoring the absurdity of the suggestion, SCP-4512 is currently in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm not even sure enough people live here to go to a nightclub. And boy, I bet that's going to make some of my friends in Minneapolis mad. So we have, lastly, we tried to build a club around it, where we can kind of keep it clean, but not so clean that it would demanifest. And this actually worked for over a month. And then somebody shit in the pool. And the incident caused 8 fatalities due to air embolism in the lungs and 29 injuries due to shattered eardrums and collapsed lungs. So we go from this to an interview log, and this is between a researcher who is familiar with the Hawaiian language, which we've observed the skip using words and phrases in, and the skip, the pool itself. So there's quite a bit of dialogue here, and the gist of it, the researcher tries to speak to the pool in Hawaiian, and the pool says, "Yeah, totally." You get the impression very quickly that the pool does not actually know Hawaiian, and we more to the point might not actually be Hawaiian, because when our researcher takes the skip up on its discussion of luau parties, the researcher was talked about their favorite dish being kulolo, which is a dessert, and the skip says that its favorite thing is cheeseburgers, which not really a staple of native Hawaiian cuisine. And we we go through here to where the skip finally says, the researcher asks, "Where are these parties? In Hawaii, I assume?" And the skip says, "Hawaii? What's that?" And we have a all caps, "Command informs the researcher not to describe Hawaii to SCP-4512. And so they said, "All right, sorry, I misspoke. Where are these parties?" And the skip says, "Wherever there's a sunset, tequila, and hula babes." So this back and forth goes just a little bit longer. We have a standing order not to tell the skip about Hawaii and what it is, and that's where we end the article. There's a lot to unpack from a very silly work here. It's one of those, like, this little add-on at the end. I'm actually of two minds about it. I struggled with whether or not to include this over other pieces, because it is there's another work here that I think is really in the butter zone of stupid. This one is really in danger of being on just the wrong side of that line. That I'm okay with the pool that demanifests and manifests, and you can clean it out to appease it. But we get into this thing where it's kind of a poser. It might be a Minnesotan pool that's sort of posing about being a Hawaiian. I'm not sure what this honestly buys us. It lengthens the article, certainly, but what we have here is, like, it's this whole other, like an let's try that one again. We're anthropomorphizing the pool in, it's a unique subversion of maybe what you're expecting. So maybe that's sufficient reason to do it. You can certainly want the work to stick in the minds of the people that you're having read it, and I think this does. If you're looking at it from that standpoint, you want this to be something that your readers go, "Oh yeah, it's the one with the poser Hawaiian pool." Then that's easier for people to remember than, it's the pool that shows up full of crap, and you clean it out, because we've done certain things like that even as far back as series 1. So with a little more thought, I think I get why that's there, and I think that makes sense. The skips don't always have to be about putting a man on the moon. Sometimes they can be about kind of weird fake Hawaiian swimming pools, and that's okay. And so is this. This is an easy +1. Moving on. SCP-3614. This is titled Your Reality, and it was written by Tupac Official, which it reminded me that once upon a time Max Landis was on the site and wrote a piece about the hologram of Tupac. Remember when that was making the rounds? Those were wild times. Anyway, 3614 has an object class of Euclid and an image that is fairly indeterminate. There's a what looks like a sky and a small, it could be a raindrop, it could be pretty much anything, but the caption reads SCP-3614-2, photographed during descent. The procedures indicate that -1 is immovable, so we've constructed a site around it. We have a 4-kilometer perimeter around -1, and we have a cover story to get civilian traffic routed around it, saying there's military operations in the area. The -2 is to be kept in a standard low security containment locker. and testing can only be done with level 5 approval. And the Overseer Council is investigating the credibility of document 3614-B, which was recovered from Dash 2 upon its discovery on February 27th, 2019. That's 5 days from now. In addition, the Foundation is attempting communication with 3614 Prime to gain more information regarding potential anomalous influences on consensus reality. However, current temporal models estimate chances of success to be low, approximately 1 out of 10 by 10 to the 100th power. Those are slim odds. And the description indicates that we have, as you might have guessed, three different things kind of covered here. 3614 designates a set of 3 extra-temporal anomalies. Dash 1 is a conic area of space in Toole County, Utah, United States. The anomaly is about 500 meters in height and 2 meters in width at its base, tapering towards its top. And it appears as a distinct visual distortion of the surrounding area, taking on a crystalline-like appearance and texture. And it's been reported by on-site personnel to emit a high-pitched noise akin to that of wind blowing. And all matter that enters Dash 1 will be transported to a space-time anomaly designated 3614 Prime. The Prime anomaly appears effectively identical to Earth, however numerous aspects of it are inconsistent with those in baseline reality. The Dash 1, this conic area of space, was unintentionally created during preliminary tests of Project Black Crevasse, and Black Crevasse is all caps. I was laughing with Rounderhouse in the chat that this is a project name that he would be kind of drooling over. He and I are both on the same page that you give us nice military sounding inscrutable project names in all caps, and we're on board for it. We describe Black Crevasse as a project initiative headed by 2 of the O5s, 1 and 13. They discovered 3614 Prime. The initial experiments failed, so O5-1 discontinued Black Crevasse on June 21st of 2018. So we have a project brief that they mention. And then we go from there to Dash 2, which is described as an ellipsoidal metallic capsule originating from 3614 Prime. And the dimensions are approximately 1.3 by 2.8 meters, so pretty good size, about 3 feet by 8. About 4 feet by 8. And analysis has revealed that the Dash 2 is comprised of non-anomalous steel, along with several other substances unknown to modern science. And it contains an electronic terminal interface similar to those used by the Foundation, from which the document 3614C was recovered. I'm wondering if that is an oversight, because it was called Dash B in one place and Dash C in another. I suspect that is all it is, just an oversight. So we go on to explain some divergence from our realities. In theirs, there's advanced technology beyond the capabilities of our current science to understand, different sociocultural trends throughout history, the non-existence or otherwise historical displacement of events and time periods of the Prime timeline, and the Foundation revealing its existence to the public in the early 21st century, acting as a global agency with significant influence in the governments of all worlds, and most notably, the absence of all sapient life within 3614 Prime. So we have an addendum after this that describes some events that happened in our timeline and happened differently or did not happen at all in the Prime timeline. And they include things like the First Crusade, the fall of the Inca Empire, the Cambodian Civil War, the Democracy Wall movement, and the existence of the Congo Free State. Significant deviations in each of these between our timeline and theirs. We have from there a second addendum with some correspondence between the 2 project leads on this work. And these are constructed as emails. And one thing I want to bring up, it's fine, but you should be aware if you're writing these emails. These are addressed to users at scp.foundation. I would strongly suggest not doing that. scp.foundation is actually a valid domain. It doesn't go anywhere at the time, right now, but it could in the future. I'm actually in line to bid on it once its little copyright block is up. So at some point in the future, scp.foundation will likely resolve to a valid, those may be valid emails in the future, so I wouldn't do that. And I've also seen things like skip.net, certainly wouldn't do something like that. If you want to do, like if they're internal emails like this, you could end them in .int, int, which won't resolve anywhere for the time being. The whole TLD doesn't exist at all. I would do that. .foundation actually is a real TLD, and scp.foundation is a real potential domain. So just a little aside. Anyway, the correspondence between the two leads basically start out saying that this world doesn't look like anything all that significant. There's no sign of any sentient life, and they notice after a little more research, a few days pass, and the basic laws of science still apply, and our Hume levels are pretty much the same. It's not a parallel or pocket dimension. This actually looks to be a full-on alternate timeline. And they say level 1 on the Tegmark scale, if this is a real scale, or I say real, maybe in air quotes. I haven't seen that used anywhere, and I'm okay with that. So it becomes a little bit more intriguing to these project leads, and we find 5 days later the existence of a facility on the other side of the this spatial anomaly, that it's actually a Foundation site, and specifically it's Site 82, and for whatever reason they finished construction over there. So we are able to kind of piece together a little bit that if they've built Site 82, then they probably gave Black Crevasse the green light as well, and God only knows what happened after that. So that sort of brings us back to this project that we are sort of hinting at Black Crevasse, and this is actually really well executed. These emails. Black Crevasse was nothing more than a set of ideas, only in the realm of hypothetical. Looking back, it was never meant to be, at least in our world. Maybe we could learn more about what could have been. Report on what you find there. We find out that in this alternate timeline, not only did Black Crevasse move forward, but they also started another project called Light Empath, and it was put into play as soon as Black Crevasse ended. And what we find is that we can barely make sense of it because it's so incredibly complex and it's so far beyond anything we've ever seen or developed. So we sort of postpone any exploration of Prime while we try to figure out what's going on, because we have still not found any life forms at all, but we found this Foundation site and stuff that we don't fully understand. So out of an abundance of caution, we're going to stop exploring. And the narrative picks up in these last two emails that one of the two researchers kind of pieces together what they have a theory of what it might be, that we've been peering through the looking glass so much that we've gotten tunnel vision. 3614-1 is a one-way window to another world, another timeline, a different history where all sapient life is dead. This is what it looks like from our side. What if we've been looking through from the wrong side? And it ends with, we aren't looking at them, they're looking at us. And we go to a document. This is the Black Crevasse project brief. And this is pretty nicely formatted, a little top secret, and we have our code name and the project aim, which is to create a convenient means of travel to and from determinative sets outside of normal temporal progression as understood by conventional science. So the O5s want to build something to switch between timelines, and the reasoning is that we want to have basically a backup plan to SCP-2000 that we should be able to find a timeline where whatever scenario might prompt us to need to use 2000, we could instead find a timeline where such a threat never exists in the first place. That's risky business if you ask me, but the O5 seem to think it's a good idea. We go on to find that Black Crevasse was suspended indefinitely. We go from here to document 3614B. This is referenced as C a little bit earlier, and I think that was just a mistake because this is more or less where the work ends. Almost. There's a little bit after this, but we have 3614B. This was a file that we recovered from the electronic interface found on -2, the thing that sort of fell out of -1, and we have a disclaimer that says the following document is subject to an extensive investigation by the O5 Council to determine the credibility of its contents, and the following information is not verified as truthful and may be misleading or completely false. And we have a collapsible that if you click on it, we have an SCP-001 item number and an object class of Apollyon. So, and this is something to kind of keep in mind, that this is coming from the other side of this timeline, from this alternate reality or whatever you wish to call it. They describe SCP-001 as being currently uncontainable, and contact with it must be avoided with the exception of Project Light Empath Initiative 14 Phi Bravo. I love it. All attempts of contact from 001 are to be ignored. More information to follow, and we talk about Light Empath a little bit. The contents of this file are to be sent to SCP-001 via Project Light Empath to establish one-way communication with 001. And we describe 001, or I should say they describe 001, as a determinative set. Divergence from the prime timeline is hypothesized to have occurred within 10 years of 3000 BC. Project Light Empath has revealed that 001 is under the influence of numerous anomalous social, economic, and cultural trends that have not been observed in any other determinative set, and it's hypothesized this is due to a hostile entity or phenomenon currently exerting control over the inhabitants of SCP-001. The effects of 001 are currently spreading throughout all other determinative sets at an unknown rate, and the vector of infection is unknown. And refer to the following document for more details. This is an addendum 001-1, and it says, and it's sort of a quote, it's a letter within this big block quote, and it says, this document is intended for the eyes of, and it has 051 through 13, and real name, and in all of them the real name has had its data expunged. And we have basically here a letter to the O5 Council, and it explains that 5 years ago they launched Project Light Empath. It had many of the same goals as Black Crevasse. It was an attempt to catalog as many determinative sets as possible as a contingency plan, and in doing so, they had cataloged 10 to the 100th power different timelines before you reached out with Black Crevasse, and what we discovered scared us. And of the 10 to 100 determinative sets, 10 to 100 possible realities that could blossom forth from the seeds of time, your reality was different. Your technology was thousands of years behind even the most primitive timeline we'd encountered up to that point. The horrors you hear of every day, be it war, disease, or famine, while still present in ours, are rampant in yours. They are anomalies of your world. You are living in a dystopia worse than any of us could have ever dreamed of. So SCP-001 is us. I love this. This is really ambitious, and it keeps going. It explains that we found your timeline, and our initial reaction wasn't to reach a helping hand, to do something to try and aid or assist. It was to run away. So we hid, and Light Empath sealed our reality off and made your attempts at finding us show you an empty world that's a mere afterimage of ours, devoid of any sign of humanity. We've deliberately made it impossible for you to find us or contact us. Black Crevasse was not a failure. It was too successful for its own good. You failed efforts at finding a beacon of hope, a light cutting through the bleakness of the abyss, and it was not because there's nothing out there. They failed because we willed it not to be. Our world at large has been living in an unprecedented era of peace and technological advancement for the last 2 centuries. Meanwhile, yours has undergone the same cycle of trying to build a better future, only to give way to strife and chaos again and again. You are destined never to make any real progress. While we live in the safety of our houses, look upon our fellow citizens, and smile at them with trust and care, we can only say this to you, our fallen brethren. We're so sorry. Secure, contain, protect. And this document is signed by the O5 Council, all 13 members. So this was this was presented as possibly false, but possibly not, and they leave that up to you to sort of determine what you think it is. We have one last bit here that says warning O5 eyes only. We input credentials, biometric scan, and you're welcomed as O52. And it says decision in progress. Overseer Council action number 31-1. Motion as follows. Classify the phenomenon as detailed by 3614-2 as anomalous and enact emergency special containment procedures. We have a yay by O513, a nay by O51, none abstaining, and the remaining 11 members still pending. And that's where the article ends. This was really good. I started out not really feeling it, and by the end I was thoroughly hooked. We've done plenty of stuff with alternate timelines. The way that this is presented and the way that things sort of converge to this conclusion that SCP-001 is us and our, terrible, state of things is really good. This is criminally underrated right now at plus 22. And as far as I know, if this isn't a first-time piece, this is a very new author. They have absolutely nailed the tone. Every part of this is really solid. So 3614, really, really well done. Very easy +1. Moving on. SCP-3673. This is titled But When the Door is Closed, and it was written by Pasul? Sul. I've seen them around for ages. I never thought to ask them what their name is, and they're not around right now, so sorry about that. We have no image visible, and in fact there is no image at all to the article. We have an object class of Euclid, and procedures that indicate that the building containing 3673 is to be sealed and guarded with the cover story of a failed restoration project, and the door to 3673 remains closed and barricaded. All footage recorded by the camera in 3673 will be retained for analysis, and a second camera is to be installed to film through the windows into 3673. So, something within a building with a camera already in place and another one that we are setting up to monitor it. And security personnel are advised to ignore any noises audible from 3673, and further experimentation is pending level 4 approval. So that's all that we've got. The description indicates that the skip is Studio 5C of the Black Box Arts Building located in Lower Manhattan. And the room is located on the 5th floor and was used as a ballet studio. It contains a mirrored wall with a ballet bar, roof-level windows on the northern side, and a single door, and there are no other exits. And on or about July 7th, 2016, SCP-3673 became the locus of a spatial anomaly, and since this time, when the door is closed, all persons inside appear to be affected by spatial distortions and related phenomena. These phenomena cannot be observed from outside the skip. When the door to the skip is closed, no communication is possible with persons inside, and the room appears empty when viewed through the exterior windows. No persons who have been subject to the anomaly have been recovered. A lot going on here. And the only information about the conditions within 3673 is from a CCTV camera located in the upper northwest corner of the room. The camera records black and white video, but not sound, and from this camera, the majority of the studio may be observed, including when the door is closed. And that is all of the immediately visible work here, but we have 3 addenda. They are quite long. The first one is a video transcript, and it involves a few girls being after a ballet class has ended. There are 4 children aged 7 to 9 still in the studio, and there's a lot going on here, and this thing may suffer from having a few too many things going on at once, and that's not anything against the author, but it's really difficult to visualize something like this when you've got 4 different people you're trying to remember who's doing what. It's hard. I don't know the best way to go about it, but after the door closes, one of the girls begins to pirouette, just sort of practicing, and as she turns, her grounded foot sinks into the wooden floor of the studio, and on her final turn, her image in the mirror stops moving, and the other reflections continue motion as normal. And when she spins to face the mirror again, the reflection resumes synchronization, and her toe is again grounded on the studio floor. As this addendum goes, the spatial anomalies get more and more bizarre and nightmarish and fever dream-esque. Things get really, fever dreamy, trippy sort of things. I highly recommend reading this because I'm not going to I'm not going to attempt to read most of this, but suffice it to say, things get really trippy, really terrifying. And the more you go, I think the better this thing gets, because things escalate in a very gripping way. The further it goes, the more bizarre it gets. The visual anomaly itself becomes, the spatial anomaly, I should say, is visible. The girls are interacting with it. They'll stick things in it, and they become, they change shape and dimensions, and they start playing with it. Their hands, and try to make shapes and so on. And they're having a great time. And then one of the girls runs through the other. Both are confused by this. One girl's head emerges from a sliding window into the studio, and the window slams shut. She's decapitated. Another girl pokes her head into the anomaly and collapses. One, sees the other two, and falls upwards, flying through the ceiling, and the decapitated one's head drops through the ceiling and lands on the floor. The floor vibrates, and blood begins to seep upward through the floor to the ceiling. A lot going on. Just really, really wild stuff. The dead coming back to life. It's really gnarly stuff. I'm a bit at a loss for words. So, please give this a read. I'm taking probably 5% of this log, and we go from there to a second addendum with D-class testing, and we. Predictably, this doesn't really end well for the D class either. They get sort of physically distorted. There is apparently a very strong gravitational pull from the floor, and from the ceiling, and our D class is very quickly sort of pulled in two, but this happened so quickly that we almost didn't see it. There's legs protruding from the ceiling, and very strange stuff. Very, very strange stuff. We end this with an exploration log with MTF Zeta 9 mole rats going into this anomaly. And this is a really well-constructed log of the MTF and how they would take precautions to try to navigate such an anomaly, knowing in advance kind of what having some idea of what they're getting themselves into. They set out, and once they get in, they're subject to either a time or a distance dilation. It takes them more than 6 minutes to travel a distance of approximately 15 meters. And they're aware of the situation, and that the studio door remains visible. And about 2 meters from the door, one of the agents strikes a barrier which can't be seen on camera, and the rig that they've set up in front of themselves to sort of be a dummy that could let them know what sort of temporal, spatial anomalies or dimensional instabilities might be in front of them, it didn't respond to this. So they can't get past this barrier, they find that the barrier blocks the entire width of this studio, and the agent, the lead here, indicates to the camera a change of mission parameters pointing to the windows on the opposite wall. After about 5 minutes of trying to walk there, they find another barrier, I should say, located about 4 meters from the opposite wall. And now they try to go back the other way, and now they can't get out. They strike the first barrier again. So they begin. They're basically being penned in now by this barrier that they can't see and they can't really work with. So they are. And this barrier is rapidly closing. It's less than 3 meters now from edge to edge. There's an observation team that is trying to intervene here. They try to cut a hole in the mirrored wall, and they've cut this hole as deep as their forearm, and the entire depth of the hole is glass with no change in composition. We try to open the door to see if that does anything. So on camera, we can see this researcher that opened the door, and the agents can see the researcher, and they begin shouting and banging on the barrier, but the researcher reports that the room is empty, and the observation is corroborated by other researchers that are on their side of the door. The barriers are less than 2 meters apart at this point. One of the agents cuts a hole in the floor. The two agents try to enlarge the hole. The lead secures a rope and drops an end through, and the room below can be seen through it. And they've sufficiently widened it. The barriers are now only 1.5 meters apart. They attempt to reach through the hole in the floor, and they find another invisible barrier. Neither the cutting tools nor the rope were affected. One of the agents is kind of freaking out at this point. They draw their gun. The lead knocks it away, and it falls outside the barrier, so now they can't even reach that. The barriers are 1 meter apart. An agent places hands on both barriers and tries to push outwards to no effect. Two agents try to climb upwards towards the ceiling, and they successfully affix the rope to a ceiling panel. They start to cut upwards. The barriers are approximately 75 centimeters apart. They hold their position. They are trying to do everything they can to get out because these barriers are still closing in, and we have no luck here. The barriers eventually cave in our poor MTF almost totally. We have an estimated separation by the time we're done of less than 0.1 centimeters. So our entire MTF is killed in action here. And we go to a couple of updates that mention personnel report hearing knocking and thumping sounds coming from the other side of the studio door. And the noises ceased after about 20 minutes. The camera feed showed nothing. And lastly, we have another update that says that an external survey of the building alerted the research team to change conditions inside the skip. Large letters had been sprayed on the floor of the studio using fluorescent orange paint. The letters faced the windows, and it read, "Don't TR," the last letter misshapen as if rushed. The letters were accompanied by a series of 6 handprints made using the same fluorescent paint. The prints were clearly defined, regularly spaced, and appeared to be from the left hands of distinct individuals, and 3 of the handprints were child-sized. None of the markings were visible on the camera feed, which showed the skip empty. Deliberations are ongoing as to whether to reopen the studio door. End article. This one's creepy as hell. This one got me. This is really good horror writing. At its core, these logs go from, really surreal, wild, scary stuff to really, disturbing body horror in this third log with these barriers that they can't see. They don't seem to be affected by anything at all. They're totally inexorable, and they end up, killing all the members of this task force. So the last update, our 6 handprints, our 6 left handprints. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I feel like it, with it or without it, we have roughly the same. We could get to the same place with this, It is. I don't think it buys us anything, and I would just as soon leave it out. But that is a very minor nitpick on a very good work. This is a good one of these that's a good combination of stuff that I've seen and liked in the past and some more modern storytelling. Really good. I think I successfully hammered it in at this point. You need to read this. You need to read these logs. They're quite long. They're very much worth your time. Easy +1. Moving on. SCP-4144, titled The Most Important Meal of the Day. This is written by Mortos, and we have an object class of Keter, and no images to be found, actually. 2 in a row like that. We have procedures that indicate that the development of neural networks by public and government agencies is to be monitored and altered as necessary to prevent the detection of 4144. That's unusual. We also have the development of monastic compounds by agencies outside of Foundation control is to be prevented using any means necessary by MTF Epsilon 7 Forget-Me-Nots as part of their standard operations. So we have a Keter object that is whatever it is. We are going out of our way to prevent the development of monastic compounds to aid in its containment. That's something to think about. And we go from there to the description, which reads, SCP-4144 is the concept of breakfast. A slight digression here. I remember seeing this get pitched in what feels like a month ago now, and I didn't say anything about it. Not really, I don't think. But there's no way. We're not. You can't make this work. They made this work. I'm here to tell you. So 4144 is the concept of breakfast. The anomalous properties of 4144 are wide and varied, but primarily manifest as an alteration to the memories and experiences of all partaking humans, causing them to believe they have eaten a meal between the time they wake up and noon local time. The effect extends to perceptions of images or videos of people supposedly eating SCP-4144, and to the memories of those who believe themselves to be preparing or purchasing food specifically for 4144, causing them to believe that these activities are actually occurring. So, at this point, I'm going, are they trying to say what I think they are? And they are, because the next sentence reads, Despite centuries of historical and cultural evidence, recent investigations suggest that no one in human history has ever eaten a meal that could be described as breakfast. I didn't know what they were really going to do with this, but this wasn't what I thought they were going to do. So when ideating an instance of 4144, a person will spontaneously disappear from their current location, along with the food they were intending to eat, and are temporarily replaced by a mannequin made of styrofoam. It superficially bears their appearance. These mannequins are designated -1. Observers will see -1 instances as the person they've replaced. Following a period of time typical of the consumption of the intended food items, the mannequin will disappear, and the person will reappear in their place, along with the appropriately placed remains of a meal. And instances of -1 will perform any actions typically expected of the translocated person, and upon their return, they'll remember all actions undertaken by the -1 as though they themselves performed the actions. It's unknown whether this is some form of memory transfer between the two, or if they're remotely controlling the -1 instances. So let's back this up. You think you're eating breakfast. You go to eat breakfast. You are replaced with a mannequin that looks more or less like you, made of styrofoam. The styrofoam person appears to observers to be eating breakfast, and after it's done, you swap places with it again, and it demanifests. What the fuck? Okay. So we discovered 4144 due to discrepancies in a neural network trained to identify images. We tried to tag images with people eating breakfast and things along those lines. The neural network couldn't get a match, and it happened often enough that we began to investigate. So basically, the neural network could figure out that humans had never eaten breakfast, so it couldn't match on these images. So this is the first time I've seen neural networking used in a work like this that I can really think of as being really pivotal to the discovery, and I really like it. We had some investigation logs of we dosed a D class up to the gills with class X monastics and told them to eat a bowl of cereal. And upon remanifesting, the D class collapsed and began gasping for breath, and they recalled falling some distance in darkness into a bag or a sack filled with thick fluid, which then closed above them. They felt a sharp stabbing pain in their left thigh, after which they were unable to hold their breath, losing consciousness as the fluid entered their lungs. They claimed to see patterned markings surrounding a puncture wound, leaking a thick brown fluid on their thigh. The researchers were unable to perceive the wound. The fluid supposedly dried and evaporated within minutes, leaving no evidence, and no trace of fluid was found in their lungs. We tried this again and got similar results from a second D class. We took broad spectrum imaging of the supposed wound location. This time it was in the left pectoral muscle, and the D class was given sample kits to take samples of the fluid. We actually did find, through our analysis, a deep puncture wound surrounded by a pattern of cuts and abrasions that formed an anti-mimetic symbol, preventing normal perception of the wound or the fluid. An analysis of the fluid failed. Nothing of the samples remained by the time we performed testing. We repeated these tests a few more times to establish a baseline, and we basically got one. This is very much how this phenomenon seems to work, that while they are allegedly eating breakfast, they are actually going through a very traumatic, painful experience, and since then all of our D-class have shown a reluctance to eat anything they would consider to be breakfast. We had another D-class that we monestized and provided with an environmental suit with a 1-hour supply of oxygen and a standard field survival kit, and we gave them a bunch of sample collection containers. He was instructed to eat a large breakfast of cooked meats, potato products, baked beans, and fruits. He demanifested as he was sitting to eat before removing the sealed helmet, and this confirmed that intention to eat rather than the actual process is sufficient to trigger the anomaly's effects. And we go from here to a transcript and exploration log from this D-class. So our video begins with the D-class falling into viscous fluid coating the inside of an organic-looking tube. He sort of yelps out in pain and reported sharp impacts on his lower back, but they didn't puncture his environmental suit. He grabs the knife on his belt, proceeds to cut his way through the sack, does so and falls about another 1.5 meters as it ruptures. The atmosphere below has a notable orange color, and the D-class begins taking samples of the atmosphere, fluid, sac material, all that good stuff, and notices that it is completely dark in the space, and the light is limited to what his helmet light can put out. Hanging in rows, separated about 2 meters in each direction, are hundreds of organic sacs, matching the one from which our D-class emerged from. And about 40% of them appear to have movement inside of them, although no details can be seen within and no walls can be seen to this structure. The D-class begins walking. The suit indicates he's traveling north. A little bit later, a feminine scream is heard nearby, followed by the sound of something impacting a fluid surface. And the D-Class looks towards the sound and sees one of the sacks closing from the top and moving vigorously before becoming still. And keeps walking, hear more screams. Eventually notices, he's passed by hundreds of these things and notes the environment looks like a warehouse. He looks straight up and notices a dense network of both metallic and organic pipes or tubes from which the sacks are hanging approximately 10 meters off the ground. And there's a brief flash of movement in the distance that the camera picks up, but our D-Class didn't notice. The D-Class reaches a circular area in which none of the sacks are hanging. In the center of it is a pit about 5 meters in diameter filled with a thick brown liquid, visually matching the description of that seen leaking from the wounds of the D-Class in earlier tests. And there's a constant flow of this fluid pouring from a number of tubes above the pit. The D-Class looks around, tries to collect some samples, and collects it, and notices footsteps. Reveals an instance of -1. Now, did we describe a -1 here? I didn't see one. Oh, these are okay. So the -1 was designated as our styrofoam mannequins were the -1s. So our guy notices one of these styrofoam mannequins, which has no observable features. So that's nice and unsettling too. It is. It appears to be totally mobile. It walks to the edge of the pit, it looks into it, and turns and walks away. It doesn't acknowledge our D-Class at all. Our D-Class calls out to it, and it stops to presumably turn to look at him, but we can't tell because there's no visible eyes on the thing. Then turns away and runs, and our D-Class runs in the opposite direction, and every so often he keeps walking. Keeps passing by these sacks. There's more sounds of screams followed by these sort of splashes as they fall into the sacks. And our D-Class turns and finds 3 instances of -1 directly behind him, goes to run, finds himself surrounded by -1s. They grab him, they drag him down the path, and about a minute and a half later, they have dragged our D-Class to another clearing. He can't escape. In the center of this clearing, suspended from thick tubing in the ceiling, is a large structure resembling a heart made of a white organic material, and it beats silently. Further tubing can be seen running from the bottom of the structure into a large hole in the ground beneath it. A large tear spontaneously forms in the side of the heart structure, and an instance of -1 steps out from within, and the tear seals up. 2 instances approach the newly emerged one and begin applying something to its face area. And the -1 instance is handed a long pointed rod connected by a tube that runs into the hole beneath the heart and moves away from the other 2. Our D-Class is dragged to his feet. The new instance approaches him. It's been painted with features that resemble those of our D-Class, and it stares at him briefly. And after another 30 seconds, our -1 thrusts the rod into the D-Class abdomen. A scream can be heard, and the video feed is lost. And 12 minutes, about 30 seconds after this log ends, before finishing his breakfast, our D-Class stood up and attacked the 2 guards present in the room with his eating utensils and displayed superhuman strength, and we had to respond with deadly force and terminated our D-Class. The autopsy revealed that the D-Class's entire body was made of extruded polystyrene foam, better known as styrofoam, though all the clothing and equipment worn was confirmed to be that of our original D-Class, along with the recovered samples and recordings. Analysis of the white fluid and sample taken from the sacks was inconclusive, revealing only that they were some form of unknown organic material. The atmosphere was made primarily of ammonia, and the floor samples consisted primarily of iron and calcium and had a similar structure of bone. Analysis of our brown fluid revealed it to be made up of lactose, soy products, processed wheat and rice products, proteins from various types of animal, and fiber from various types of fruit. End article. How about that? So, as far as I can tell, and comments on this skip pretty much go along with me on this one, that when you think you're eating breakfast, the breakfast is eating you. Like, it's one of these, like, there's a line somewhere between stupid and scary, and this walked it really well, actually. The video log is really good. As you really read it and make an effort to sort of visualize what's going on, this is really creepy. I think they've done a really, really outstanding job here. This is an easy +1 primarily because I didn't think this could be done. I saw it pitched. I bit my tongue. I don't tell people generally that it's not going to work, because every time I do, people prove me wrong. That's exactly what happened here. 4144 was really, really well done, and a very easy +1 from me. Last but not least, SCP-4213, titled I Scream. This is a co-write between Yasi and Dr. Cimmerian. We have an image of, let's call him an old man, holding an ice cream cone. He's got a fez of some sort. Not really familiar with this style of clothing. And it reads SCP-4213 after an acquisition event. So we have an object class of Keter and procedures that indicate that our skip's movements are to be monitored from outside AV range by MTF Row 4, the Neapolitans. And following 4213's departure from a location, all individuals who interacted with the object are to be administered a Class A amnestic. So 4213 is described as a Tibetan man, presumably in his 50s or 60s, so apologies, I showed my ignorance a bit there. I'm not familiar with Tibetan, apparently with what a Tibetan person looks like. They are capable of bypassing all cognitive resistance within humans, effectively allowing SCP-4213 to control the actions of others, and prevention of this effect is impossible once 4213 has been perceived. 4213 solely utilizes its anomalous properties to facilitate travel to a location with a high concentration of frozen dairy products, and then uses them to compel the holder of those products to grant 4213 access to them. It will then begin to consume any acquired products. It is unknown if the skip is capable of utilizing its anomalous properties for reasons other than the acquisition of frozen dairy products, as it's never been observed to do so. However, all attempts to effect long-term containment of 4213 have been unsuccessful due to the frequency of these acquisition events. So we go to an incident log, and this takes place in Site-88's cafeteria during its free ice cream day. 4213 proceeded to acquire several servings of frozen dairy product, and during this event, they were confronted by a Foundation doctor, and we have an interview log between our doctor and our skip. So we begin with the doctor asking our skip, "How did you first come to learn about your abilities?" He goes, "I don't know." I said, "Do you ever think about how your abilities affect others?" He goes, "Huh?" "For instance, imagine you've taken some ice cream from a child." And the skip smiles, and both are silent for a few seconds. And said, "Never mind. Can you recall an incident where someone has resisted your commands?" "No." "What do you remember?" He doesn't say anything. Said, "Look, we've been monitoring you for years. Now that you're actually here, I just want to answer, can you answer a couple of questions?" The skip replies, "You're weird." He goes, "I'm not." And the skip just walks away. And our doctor says, "I just want some answers, all right?" He says, "I don't care." Doctor says, "Can you at least wait here a second? I think I know something that would help." The skip says, "Fine." So our doctor quickly grabs a big styrofoam bowl full of ice cream, and our skip begins to relax. And our doctor says, "Can you use your abilities to acquire anything other than ice cream?" There's silence for approximately 5 seconds. Then the skip points to the bowl Dr. Curtis is holding. He says, "Give me that bowl." And the doctor falls under 4213's effect at this point and is unable to continue the interview. End log, end article. We have what is potentially the most dangerous man in the world, and he uses his powers exclusively and explicitly for the purpose of making people give him ice cream. I absolutely love this. It's one of those, like, if you unpack it just a little bit, it's legitimately scary, like, as far as what it could do. But I reached out to Cimmerian after reading this. I told him this is just the right amount of stupid, and and I stand by that. This is I love it. It's quick, it gets right to the point, and it's executed really, really well. Not a ton to deconstruct, honestly, and that's okay. They don't all have to. Easy +1, and that's the last one. That's what I got for week 8. I really enjoyed. I highly enjoyed all of them this week. Something to really love about every one of them. Like I said, I will be doing a one shot. I think I will be releasing that on Monday. It's going to be SCP-4504. I'm going to do a deep dive on that. I want to really get into all the different component pieces of it. So I will be covering that, and we'll do the week 9 pod February 29th. That's next Friday. Until then, keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you on the other side.